Concentration Camps by Carly Calloway and Paige Neighbors. Narrated by Carly Calloway. The Random House Encyclopedia defines the term concentration camp as centers where people of certain political, racial, or military persuasions are placed for detainment, punishment, slave labor, or extermination by totalitarian government, usually without trial for due process of law. Nazi Germany before the beginning of the Second World War built a plan for the extermination of Jews, Gypsies, and slaves. Nazis formed 15,000 to 20,000 concentration camps in occupied countries of Europe. The three main camps were 1. Dachau. The first Nazi concentration camp opened in March 1933, close to Munich, Germany. It was considered a model and prototype for other Nazi concentration camps. Over 200,000 prisoners were housed there. It was registered as a labor camp, but in reality, it was a death camp that massively murdered prisoners. 2. Auschwitz. Auschwitz was the largest and most infamous Nazi concentration camp. Auschwitz was established in 1941 in Poland. It was divided into three main sections. First was Auschwitz I base camp. Second was Auschwitz II Birkenau extermination camp. And lastly was Auschwitz III Monowitz labor camp. Majorities were murdered by gas chambers which could contain about 2,000 victims at once. It is estimated that 1.1 million prisoners were killed at this camp. And third, Buchenwald. Buchenwald was one of the largest concentration camps. It was established in July 1937 and operated until April 1945. Buchenwald was a concentration camp for male prisoners only until 1944 when women became part of the camp system. There was an estimate of 250,000 inmates at this camp. There was a hospital at this concentration camp, but the sick and wounded never received any treatment. On April 12, 1945, Buchenwald was liberated by American troops, causing the downfall of all concentration camps in Germany. Nazis brought and imprisoned millions of people without any judgments or decisions. This is mainly because they were Jews, slaves, or gypsies. Some people were imprisoned just because they were political opponents or hostages. Killings in the Nazi concentration camps were accelerating over time. Nazis killed by firing squads, mass shootings, hangings, stranglings, poisoning by injections, mass suffocation with poisonous gases in gas chambers and gas trucks, medical experiments such as freezing, hypothermia, genetic testing, infectious diseases, interrogation, torture, surgeries, and traumatic injuries were performed among the prisoners. Nazis were inadvertently killed by poor living conditions. The prisoners' sleeping arrangements were three-level bunk beds, where Nazis forced as many prisoners inside as possible. Starvation was huge in the concentration camps. Prisoners rarely ate more than once a week. Nazis forced physical labor, which would cause injuries and illnesses among most prisoners. Poor hygiene was also the reason of many prisoners' death. Prisoners were not allowed to take showers. Sometimes they were tricked by Nazis, allowing them to shower and then suffocating them with some sort of gas instead. The absence of medical care led to typhus and tuberculosis among many other diseases. The victims of the concentration camps were buried into mass graves, or they were burned in the crematorium that existed in the camps, which was run day and night by Nazis. When Nazis concluded that they would lose the war and be criminally responsible of war crimes committed against civilians, prisoners of war, wounded, sick, and shipwrecked, they started destroying the documents, as well as some camps and mass graves. Nazis destroyed so much documentation that there are some people today who will deny the Holocaust ever existed. Unfortunately, the total number of people who were deported to Nazi concentration camps in Germany and the occupying countries of Europe cannot be accurately determined because there was no reliable documentation. It is reasonable, however, to conclude that in these Nazi concentration camps, at least 8 to 10 million people were murdered.